Hello and welcome back. My name is Justina, and in today's video I'm going to talk about the full moon happening on December 18th, 19th at 27 degrees of Gemini. So if you have any planets at around 27 degrees of Gemini or Sagittarius, the sign opposing Gemini, then this full moon might bring some really interesting events for you on a personal level. However, make sure that you also check the house ruled by the planet activated by this full moon to gain a greater understanding of what this full moon could mean for you. Right, so at the time of this full moon, we've got the moon at 27 degrees of Gemini and the sun at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. And this is the same degree of the galactic center. The galactic center is placed at 27 degrees of Sagittarius. So a very special full moon here is coming up. And whenever the galactic center is activated by the transiting planets, this stimulates the awakening process here on Earth on a global level, but also any information that is revealed around this time, any events that happen might change our perspective on life, our world view forever. Now, Gemini is a mutable sign, and moon phases in mutable sign can be complex and they often bring changes, especially since this full moon is happening around two important events, which is Venus retrograde and Saturn Uranus square, the third one for this year. Now, I'll discuss this in a moment, but let's first focus on the full moon in Gemini. So here, Gemini is a dual sign. So you might be in two minds about a situation in your life, circumstances, relationship, career, whatever it is. You might have to decide between two different scenarios. If you can't make up your mind, maybe this isn't the right time. Maybe you're not ready to make this important decision. Now, we've got a few interesting alignments here happening at the time of this full moon. First of all, the moon in Gemini is peregrine. So this means that the moon is lost or wandering aimlessly. Now, the moon in mundane astrology symbolizes the people, the population as a whole. So here, this could very well describe how we might feel collectively, lost or uncertain about the future as a result of the events that unfold throughout December. The good thing about this, the moon, is that the moon will applies to trine Jupiter, and Jupiter is about to move into Pisces, here still in Aquarius, but this brings hope, this brings faith, and this helps us to see the light at the end of the tunnel. The moon is also squaring Neptune in Pisces. So here, both the sun and the moon are involved in a T-square with Neptune. So with the square to Neptune, this isn't really a time to trust our feelings, our emotions. We should also rely on our intellect. But with the T-square, this is a very wide orb, 7 degrees. So with the opposition of the sun of the moon, the tension can be really released because the Neptune is kind of out of orb. So what does it mean? This means that any help that we might need or support might not be immediately available at around the time of this full moon. Mercury, the dispositor of this full moon, is placed in Capricorn, and Capricorn gives Mercury a rather straightforward and authoritarian attitude. Mercury is changeable by nature, so this means that whatever news, whatever rules are established or revealed to us at this time might change, so things might be inconsistent. And Mercury is also squaring Chiron. So it's really important to be mindful when communicating with others, because with Mercury squaring Chiron, it's very easy to unintentionally hurt someone. Venus is conjunct Pluto at the time of this full moon, about to turn retrograde. The Venus and Pluto conjunction happened already on December 11th. This can really increase our desire for passion, for money, for love. Something to pay attention to is compulsive or obsessive behavioral patterns. Now, Venus in mundane astrology represents social norms, social standards. Venus turns retrograde every 19 months, more or less, for around 40 to 42 days. And when Venus turns retrograde, these norms, these social standards go under review, because obviously in the current world, things are changing on a monthly, daily, even sometimes weekly basis. So whatever was working before is no longer the case. So with Venus retrograde, these norms, these standards will go under review for the period of around 40 to 42 days until January 29th. So when Venus stations direct, we might see new standards being set and announced, and the old standards might be changed, might be modified. And the final event I wanted to discuss is the Saturn-Uranus square happening on December 23rd at 11 degrees of Taurus and Aquarius. So if you have any planets at around 11 degrees of one of the fixed signs, that you might really feel these energies on a deeper level. So here, this is the third square between these two titans in 2021. The first one was on February 17th, the second one was on June 13th, and this is the final one. So here, the first square in February, that was about realization, bringing the matter to the surface. The second square in June, that was about handling the matter, so how you deal with the situation, how you handle it in order to move forward. And here the final square, here we move forward. So however we deal with it now, this is how we will move forward. So what is Saturn about? Saturn is about stability. Saturn is about order. Saturn is about tradition, structure, control, while Uranus is about the future, the modern, the unique, the original. Uranus wants to break away from any limitations, any restrictions. Uranus doesn't want to be restricted in any way. So we've got this clash of energies, which oftentimes leads to protests, revolutions, and technology advancements, even with Uranus and Aquarius involved. This is a really great time for breaking away from whatever that isn't working in your life, whatever that has become stagnant, whatever that has lost its spark, its purpose. So here, Saturn and Uranus square, this is a great time for moving away from any outlived or limiting, restricting behavioral patterns, habits, relationships, situations, careers, whatever doesn't work anymore, whatever restricts your freedom, your independence, your ability to grow and move forward. It's a really great time for moving away from situations also that have become stagnant, that have become monotonous. A good time for breaking away from anything that has no longer a purpose in your life. So here, Uranus in Taurus might really stimulate you to kind of rebel and make the necessary changes in order to regain your freedom, your independence, your happiness. Right, so on this note, let's move into the predictions for each rising sign or sun sign, if you prefer. Rising sign is usually more accurate, but I let you decide. Thank you. Hello Aries, and welcome to your horoscope for this full moon. So this full moon activates your third house. So at the time, communication is really stimulated, writing, reading, dealing with all sort of projects. Generally with planets transiting the third house, daily life becomes really active. You might be multitasking, so it's really important to find time to rest, especially rest your mind every now and then, because you might burn out easily. You might also have a greater desire for expanding your knowledge, for learning, for reading and writing. You might set up a new website for your business. You might find out some important news about your siblings, your neighbors. There could be an opportunity for short distance travel as well. And generally here, there could be more activity in your community, opportunities for social gatherings, even if not physically, then on social media or on Zoom and so on. Now with the moon squaring Neptune in Pisces, it's a good time for letting go of some fears or phobias, but also it's not really a great time for purely relying on your feelings and emotions. As with the square to Neptune, there could be a certain degree of confusion and delusion around this full moon. Now with the square from Saturn to Uranus, here your personal values are really triggered and self-worth. And if you felt limited or restricted in your ability to reach your goals, your objectives this year especially, then this square with Uranus will might trigger you to break away from some old or outlived behavior, habits or routines that stand in your way and make it difficult for you to move forward with your goals or dreams, for instance. But also your personal values are stimulated, so you might redefine your values, your money spending habits as well. And here with Venus about to turn retrograde, you will be reevaluating your career, your public status, your life vision moving forward in the weeks that when Venus stays retrograde. Right, so on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Taurians, and welcome to this full moon in Gemini horoscope, and this is happening in your second house of income, finances, resources, possessions. So at the time of this full moon, your financial status comes into focus, and you might seek more financial freedom, more financial independence as well. You might see some money coming through to your bank account as a result of any investments that you may have. It's a great time for letting go of any outlived habits or behavior patterns, especially the ones that negatively contribute to your financial situation. You might redefine your personal values as well this time, especially with the Saturn and Uranus square. But also with the moon here, the full moon in the second house, you might purchase something that you've been saving for. Financial planning, budgeting is also beneficial at this time. Now, the square with Saturn and Uranus, so it's the 10th and the first house is activated. So with the Saturn in your 10th house, if you felt that something or someone was pressuring you, limiting your freedom or restricting your abilities to move forward with your public life, professional life, this could be someone in authority figure, this could have been someone at your work, someone in your family, perhaps one of the parents, the one that has more authority in the family. Now with the square, you will be really stimulated to change something, to seek more independence, more freedom. And here your financial life is also emphasized. So you might seek more financially secure life. Perhaps you've been overly dependent on someone. So here with this full moon, you might be stimulated to become more independent, financially independent, or whatever it is as a result of any conflicting situations at your career or with one of the parents. And here with this square to Uranus, you really seek to free yourself from any restricting or limiting situations or people in your life. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Geminis, and welcome to this full moon in your sign, in your first house. It's a very special full moon. Now there's a full illumination on your persona. So it's a fantastic time for dealing with anything that is connected to you, with your personal goals, ambitions, long-term plans, and so on. You might be more conscious of your appearance. You might want to change something in your look. You might want to pamper yourself. And generally this full moon is about moving away from any outlived or negative structures, life structures, behavior patterns, routines that stand in the way of self-empowerment. You might also want to become more independent, self-sufficient, especially if you felt uncertain about your future, about your career, about where is it that you're heading with your life. So now this full moon might really help you to better understand your life situation, your current life situation, and decide where is it that you want to move next, moving forward. Now, the square between your 9th and the 12th house. So this is again, if you felt restricted with your life generally, if you found it difficult to move forward, if your life direction, if you were uncertain about your life direction, or generally if you needed, if the freedom that you really needed was restricted, now this square to Uranus might stimulate you to find new ways, to find more happiness in your life, to find new ways on how you can succeed on your own, because the illumination here is on the first house, on you. And here this full moon in your sign can really help you to understand what is working in your life and what isn't. And with a full moon, it's a really great time for moving away from whatever isn't working in our lives, whatever is negative and doesn't positively contribute into our growth and development. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Cancers, and welcome to this horoscope for the full moon in Gemini. And this full moon is activating your 12th house of hidden matter. So with this full moon, you are ending a 12-month cycle. So you might be ending some chapters in your life. Things could be coming to conclusion. You might be reviewing, reassessing your current life situation, your past life achievements, and you might be dealing with some situations that perhaps you put on hold before. So generally private life, private aspects of your life are emphasized with this full moon, but also spirituality, spiritual work, reading, spending time in nature, reconnecting with your inner self. You might need more rest, more sleep around this full moon. And generally with this full moon, it's also a good time for letting go of any phobias or fears. Now the square between Saturn and Uranus, this is happening between your 8th and 11th house. So if you felt like you were stuck in a situation here, especially with this of Saturn in the 8th house, and you thought there's no way you can get out of it, with the square to Uranus, you might come up with some really interesting ideas, some unique, original ideas that could help you to reach your long-term plans, long-term goals. This is one way of seeing this square. Another way, if you felt also kind of restricted, limited with some loans, some debts, then with this square to Uranus, you might also want to break away from some old habits, negative habits that perhaps negatively contribute to your financial situation and make it difficult for you to reach your long-term goals, long-term plans. Right, so on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Leos, and welcome. This full moon in Gemini activates your 11th house of friendships, group activities, so long-term plans, long-term goals. And I think this is a pretty lucky full moon because the 11th house is also the house of good fortune. So you might receive some new opportunities, you might receive some important news, or generally something nice might happen. Now this full moon might also stimulate you to review your stand within your social circle. You might be reassessing, reviewing your relationship with certain people in your life. There could be opportunities for joining a new group, a new organization. You might leave a certain group. And generally with this full moon also, teamwork, group activities are emphasized rather than independent work. Or you might be leading a group, but whatever it is, interactions with others are more beneficial with you, or working with others, teamwork, are more beneficial rather than working on your own. And here with both the Sun and the Moon squaring Neptune in Pisces, you might have to overextend yourself when trying to reach a certain milestone, but also it's really important that you believe in yourself, believe in your own skills, abilities, talents, because you might experience a certain degree of confusion or lack self-confidence when it comes to your artistic or creative abilities here with this T-square. So self-confidence in your own abilities is crucial at this time. Now the square between Saturn and Uranus. So this is happening between your 7th and the 10th house. And Uranus is in the 10th and Saturn is in the 7th. So if any restricting or limiting situations in your relationships challenged your career life in some way, then now you will seek to free yourself from any limitations concerning your relationships, personal relationships, business partnerships, or anything to do with one-to-one relationships. So generally with this activation of Uranus in Taurus in your 10th house, you really seek more freedom, more independence in your professional life, in your public life, and in your career. So here with the square, you want to move away from any people or situations that stand in the way of your career and professional life success. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Virgos, and welcome. So this full moon activates your 10th house of public life and career. And around this time, you might be more popular than usual in your outer world. And you might have to overextend yourself. You might gain more authority. You might become involved in additional or more projects at your work as well. So here you might have to find a balance between your career life and your home life, because with the sun in the 4th house, there could be also more activity surrounded around your domestic life. However, with the moon here fully illuminated in your 10th house, the demand at your work might also need your attention. So you might have to find this balance and perhaps become more organized here, especially with the square between Saturn and Uranus. Saturn is in your 6th house and Uranus in your 9th house. So this is about moving away from some old structures, especially concerning the ones concerning your daily life. Any outlived habits, dietary habits that affect your health. And so you're moving away from these. It's a great time for moving away from anything that negatively contributes to your health, to your diet, to your everyday routine, everyday life. And you might seek more freedom, more independence as well at your work with this square. And you might want to also redefine your life direction. You might want to seek more independence, more freedom, more spontaneity with Uranus activated in your 9th house, but with Saturn triggered here, especially in the 6th. You want to become more organized. You want to move away from any negative habits, dietary habits, anything that negatively contributes to your health, and reorganize or better organize your daily life, daily schedule. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Libras, and welcome. This full moon in Gemini stimulates your hunger for knowledge, for expanding your connections with others. You seek intellectually stimulating conversations, connections, relationships, but also there is a strong desire for adventure, for travel, and for spontaneity. You might be more optimistic than usual about your future, about your outlook on life. It's a great time for dealing with your life direction, deciding whether you are on the right track, whether something needs to change. You might be also dealing with your life philosophy, your beliefs. It's a great time for learning languages, for publishing. Now, your mind is really stimulated here, so it's a very intellectual time. And here with the Saturn and Uranus square, the 5th and the 8th house, this is about setting boundaries with young people. So if you work with young people, or perhaps your parenting style might change, your approach to the romantic side of your life might also be redefined at this time. With Uranus activated in the 8th house, this is about you finding more freedom. So perhaps you might want to free yourself from any limiting situations concerning your finances, concerning your love life, or perhaps if you are stuck in a situation that you thought there is no way out. Now with the square from Uranus, you might find the inner courage, the inner drive to get yourself out and move forward into a more positive future. Right, and on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Scorpios, and welcome to this full moon in Gemini horoscope. And this full moon activates your 8th house, the energy of the house that you should be very familiar with. So here this full moon is a time of growth, of development, of some really deep thoughts, deep desires. It's a really great time for letting go of any negative or outlived habits, routines that no longer serve any purpose in your life. And with this full moon, you might also go through a kind of transformation, transform the area of life that you are least satisfied with. Or perhaps if you felt like you do more for others than you do for yourself, especially here with the T-square of Neptune in Pisces, then this full moon might also prompt you to work on your own skills, desires, talents. And here the Saturn and Uranus square between your 4th and the 7th house. Saturn here in the 4th house could bring some tension in your home sphere with your family members, especially if things have been tense in the last few months since Saturn entered Aquarius and transiting your 4th house. So any outlived habits, routines, anything that negatively contributes to your relationship with your family members, or generally anything that affects the inner emotional safety and security will come into surface now. And this will be an opportunity for resolving any issues, dilemmas there might be. You might also want to bring more structure into your domestic sphere. At the same time, with Uranus in the 7th house, you might seek more freedom, more independence, and you might want to implement some changes in how you deal with one-to-one relationships. Right, and on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Sagittarians and welcome. Now this full moon in Gemini activates your 7th house of personal relationships. So here there's a full illumination on the one-to-one relationships. You might be signing some important contracts and agreements. And generally new opportunities come easier through one-to-one relationships rather than through independent work. So with this full moon, your need for companionship is increased. And this will be a really good time for moving away from some negative habits that negatively contribute to your personal one-to-one relationships. You might discover some important news or some secrets also about someone close to your heart. And with the square with Saturn and Uranus, so the 3rd and the 6th house activation, this is about here your intellect, communication. So with Saturn transiting the 3rd house, this can really trigger your self-esteem. This can really trigger your ability to believe in your intellect. And perhaps you felt like it was difficult to stand up for yourself here as a result of Saturn triggering your mind, triggering your self-esteem throughout its transit in Aquarius in your 3rd house. And perhaps you were unable to stand up for yourself and resolve any dilemmas you may have with someone in your life. So here with this square, you might actually lash out, or you might stand up for yourself. You might find it easier to stand up for yourself with the rebellious energy that comes from the square to Uranus in Taurus. And you might want to move away from any blockages, any limitations, especially limiting thoughts, limiting behavioral patterns that stand in the way towards self-empowerment. With Uranus in Taurus in your 6th house, you might be changing your routine. How you deal with your tasks, daily tasks, responsibilities might also change at this time. So also, you might move away from some negative dietary habits or anything that negatively contributes to your health and vitality. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Capricorns and welcome. This full moon in Gemini activates your 6th house. So with the 6th house activation, you might see that your daily life might become really busy. So it's really important to be organized with the full moon in the 6th house. Be organized, especially when multitasking. You might also decide you want to redefine your diets and your daily routine. So you might move away from some unhealthy dietary habits and implement a new healthy or healthier diet into your daily life. You might introduce a new health regime as well. So generally you might be dealing with your health, with your diet, with your everyday duties and responsibilities, but also your work and employment is highlighted here. So you might be involved in some new projects. You might hear from a job that you applied from before, because the full moon also fully illuminates anything that is activated. So here the activation of the employment, and you might hear some news from any job that you applied from, so perhaps an interview as well. With the sun in the 12th house, you might be also involved in some charity work. You might be volunteering as well. And with the square between Saturn and Uranus, so Saturn is in your 2nd house of personal values, income, finances, resources, and Uranus is in your 5th house of your interests, your hobbies, children, romance. So here with the squares are about making more effort. So here with the Saturn in the 2nd house this year, you may have experienced some challenges, or you might felt limited or restricted when it comes to your financial situation, and this could have affected your self-esteem, your self-worth. So here with the square to Uranus in Taurus, you might find the inner strength, the inner courage to move away from any outlived habits, routine situations, circumstances that negatively contribute to your financial success. And here with Uranus in the 5th house, you want to free yourself from any restricting, limiting obligations, especially perhaps financial obligations, that restrict your ability to support your children, to support your children's interests, or perhaps restrict your ability to find more joy and fun in your life. And here, if your daily life has become too stagnant, too predictable, here with Uranus activated in your 5th house, you might want to find new ways to reconnect with your inner child. Right, so on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Aquarians, and welcome. This full moon activates your 5th house, and with the 5th house activation, your desire for fun, pleasure, entertainment is emphasized. So you might want to reconnect with your inner child. You might feel more creative than usual as well. So with the 11th house activation, where the sun will be present, you might want to show off your skills, your talents, especially the creative ones, to a wider audience. However, you might have to self-motivate yourself, or you might have to be really well organized and well prepared, because this full moon is also involved in a T-square with Neptune in Pisces, and Neptune could create a certain degree of confusion and delusion. And if you're going to be awaiting any financial transactions at this time, make sure that you also check that the numbers are correct. Now, the 5th house full moon also emphasizes young people, children, so there could be more activity surrounded around your children. You might be working with young people, or you might also go on a date. And here with the Saturn and Uranus square, Saturn is in your 1st house and Uranus is in your 4th house. This could be a time when you finally find the inner strength, the inner courage to move away from any situations, relationships, habits, routines that stand in the way towards your happiness, towards self-fulfillment. Now, Uranus in Taurus stops life from becoming monotonous, too predictable. So if your life has become too predictable, now with Saturn and Uranus square, you might decide it's time to change something, change and modify something, and move away from anything that isn't working anymore. So this square might awaken new ideas and new possibilities that come your way. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and let's move to the next sign. Hello Pisces, and welcome. Now, this full moon activates your 4th house of domestic life, and with the 4th house activation, there is a full illumination on your home and family foundation. So issue of security, emotional inner safety and security is emphasized, and you might find out some important news, information, secrets concerning your family life. Now, with the sun in the 10th house, you might be also dealing with your career direction, and you might have to find a healthy balance between how you manage your time, between your home life and your career life. It's not really a great time for making drastic changes here with the T-square with Neptune in Pisces, because there could be a certain degree of confusion and delusion that might be experienced at some point. And generally with this full moon, you're emotionally involved in your inner life, in your private life, in your home life. You might decide you want to make some changes in your home, perhaps redecorate or declutter, getting rid of unnecessary things. That's really good with a full moon in the 4th house. And here with the Saturn and Uranus square, the 12th and the 1st house activation, you are moving away from any life structures, routines, habits that can no longer be changed or transformed. You're moving from anything that outlived its purpose. Uranus stops life from being too restrictive, too limiting, too predictable as well. So you might come up with some really new, innovative ideas for your life, for your future, for yourself. And on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and thank you very much. All right, so we reached the final sign for this video. Thank you very much for your attention. This is the final full moon for 2021. Next week, I will release the 2022 horoscopes. And then the following week, I will release the horoscopes for January 2022. I've been doing lots of writing and preparing for all these horoscopes. So I wanted to share with you some of my placements as well, because some people ask me throughout the year, and I'm a very private person and find it difficult to talk about myself, but I wanted to share them with you today. So my ascendant sign is Scorpio, my sun sign is Cancer, and my moon sign is Leo. So I've got quite a few placements in the 8th house. I'm an 8th house person, and that's what I wanted to share with you today. So on this note, I wish you a happy full moon, and I'll see you in my next video. Thank you and bye for now.